Cool.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Today we have Miss Sarah with us, and she's going to talk about production design and costuming, colors, wardrobes, all the things that she does to dress out our sets to make sure our actors are ready to go. And what we thought we would do is kind of start with where we started, and then Sarah's going to walk us through some of her process. So Sarah, how are you?
I'm good, doing good. How about you?
Fantastic too. If you'd like, let's kind of share with everybody how you and I got started. And I think it was a couple of summers ago before we even did the pilot. And we were looking at the script as we were tweaking that. And from that, we kind of came up with a color palette, some images. I was referencing kind of a film that I thought would work for us as inspiration. Would you like to start there?
Sure. Yeah, so we just started talking there to kind of figure out more of the styles and colorings that we wanted. And then kind of from there, we went on to talk about costuming and kind of what that would look like for costumes and whatnot. And of course, the set design and set kind of decoration that we would kind of utilize to try to keep it in that kind of idea. I'll show more about that a little later if we want, but
Absolutely.
I have some more information about how I sent that to our actors and worked with our actors on those items as well. So.
I think all that stuff we'll find very interesting.
Yeah.
So let's start with something. I think we're looking here at one of the images that was sent out. Mm-hmm. And in that, and I'll flip through a couple here. What did you start to see in these images?
Mostly just the coloration, very muted tones. We talked about a lot of muted tones. So just trying to keep it to that kind of palette. And then I found a palette of some different like muted tones that I liked to kind of keep that going. Cool. So, and then I remember in this, there was one moment where she had this really gorgeous blue dress, if I recall correctly. And that was just one of those moments that I was like, okay, when to use that color more of the muted tone versus the more of the color. So like that's something we use with Mackenzie if she had more of her icon color. So
yeah, I think we were talking about that. Yeah, with that red is that she would be our only cast member that we would consciously put in that red.
Right.
And yet it's still not overly saturated. It's not too powerful. It fits into that kind of a tone for us. Okay, super. Let me stop there. So if we kind of look at that as the place that we started, it probably eliminates more than it does really define. And is that kind of the thing that you need to get started with and then from there, now what do you do?
Yeah, so once we kind of figure that out, we kind of know what our base is. It definitely doesn't really, I don't think, limits us because it kind of opens up your idea to what other colors we could utilize. And then from there, mostly for me, it was the costuming was the biggest challenge for that because that's something that we really look at a lot because it's what the actor's wearing. So having to work with them to figure out what they already had too, because that's something else, another challenge that we of course had was I didn't have a budget to go out and shop for everyone. So we were having them go into their own closets and pull out items for them to be able to wear for their character.
Yeah, I
so
think
having to work with that.
That's excuse me, that's really important that people need to understand is you don't have a budget to work with. So you're pulling from what people already have, what everybody has, cast and crew that you may be able to use. And then even when you get into set design, it's what lives in Phillips Hall or some place close that you can get your hands on.
Right, and that took a lot of planning too because a lot of our stuff's off-site, so having to go and grab that item or plan ahead enough to have it on set and also have some backups in case something happened with it or something didn't work out, trying to have the other alternative options as well. So luckily for costuming, we do have our costume shop there that I can go and grab stuff from, but I would kind of go through and pre-sort stuff that was already in our palette and for certain characters to have as some backups. But Yeah.
Fantastic. So when you reached out to the actors, what were some of the tools you used to start to shape their wardrobes?
So once they got their scripts, I kind of sent out I can actually, let me pull it up. I'm going to share the screen here and show you what I sent out to them.
Fantastic.
Um, Not that one. Okay, let me get to it here. Oh, there we go. So I don't know if you can see it here. This is what I sent out to them. It was just kind of inspiration board is what I was calling it. So once
Nice.
the actors got their scripts and they can kind of read their characters and kind of get to understand their characters, every actor does this on their own. They kind of do a character analysis, but this kind of helped them kind of navigate more of what their character would wear. So kind of give them some ideas and some questions that you would ask about who your character is, kind of to get more detailed information. And this is the color palette that I sent to them as an example of what they can kind of work with to kind of get ideas of what they have in their closets, but what their character would wear and what we can kind of utilize for them.
That's brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah. I also sent them an example one, of course, of what I was kind of expecting back. This is all via email, so it's all digital. Everyone did reply with the digital, even though I gave them the option that they could make one and then send me a picture of it if they wanted it too, but it's all digital, which is an easy way to go. So this was an example I sent to them. So it's my own personal inspiration board for myself as Sarah. So you can kind of see some different clothing options, the colors I would wear, even accessories as well as something that I asked them to look into. Yes, very, very me. You can see there's the Starbucks there as well.
That's really cool, and it's great, and you never know what you're going to get back from them, right? So somebody may have a trinket that just becomes part of their character, right?
It's exactly. Well, and like Benny, I don't know if Benny, he was always snacking on everything, so he would have something along those lines as well, or even Ramona, because she's pregnant, kind of different things like that. So what's her craving thing? So
brilliant.
And this kind of gave them that creative freedom to kind of really think about it. But it also gave me an idea of what they were thinking and kind of what their idea was as well. Because I'm not technically the designer of this, so normally as a designer you would come up with all this and say this is what you have to wear. But I wanted to work with the students on this and kind of let them have that feeling of being a part of it and having that creative freedom as well.
Yeah, I love the excuse me. I love the inclusive nature of it. So they get a hand in what they would feel comfortable, what they see as their actor. Mm-hmm. But I also remember, Sarah, that this is really functional, because at one point where what you could see was there was conflict in what mm-hmm. the actor was seeing of the character,
right,
and what we had in mind. And I remember you coming in and saying, hey, this is what I'm getting back. Is this where we want to go, or is this where we need to go? And mm-hmm. it was a really tangible way to say, oh, wow, our actor is on a tangent. I mean, it wasn't anything wrong.
Right.
It's just not what we had in mind for the character at the time. So right. This was a really cool tool.
Yeah, and it was just good to see kind of where they were at, exactly what you were saying. So we can kind of gauge whether we're on the same path or if we're not, and kind of come onto that same path, which is what we ended up doing. Is we worked with the actor and kind of said, okay, how about like keep this colors and these ideas, but change it more of this way, and kind of sharing those examples with them. So
brilliant. Thank you. Brilliant.
Yeah. And then actually, what my next step was is once the actors return these back to me. This is an example of one of the actors. This is Jeannie, or Alicia. So this is what she sent back to me, and then so kind of to get an idea of what she thought about. And then I kind of fine-tuned this and then broke it down by our groups. So our house friends, the group 5, I kind of categorized them so I can kind of see what they would kind of look like all together, to kind of get an idea, to visualize it for what we might see on camera later on.
And this is brilliant. So. I mean, we know, excuse me, we know her character so well now, and it fits this to the T.
Right.
You got the A+, the perfect, the determined, the anal organization with the computer there. This is just really, really brilliant, because it's a visual way to kind of share with what they're seeing as their character. This is really good. Thank you.
Yeah, and this was at the pilot. This wasn't even before that scene that we filmed with her organizing her laptop area. So it's perfect to see this way ahead of this. So
brilliant.
Yeah. And then I would kind of here's another example of DJ, very different as you can see, but kind of still getting a general idea. And then from this, I would pull to kind of narrow down what they would actually be wearing and what they would be, kind of their look throughout the whole thing. So
beautiful, beautiful.
yeah. And then this is I'm going to show you just the breakdown here of how I categorize it by the groups. So this was our house guests, kind of give a general look for each of them, but kind of get those key points still in there to kind of see them all together, which we never really saw until the end of the pilot anyway. So
we didn't, but even now we've shot 1 and 2 and starting to shoot on 3.
Right.
All this comes through and it's consistent and it's right in line. And this work is done a year and a half ago.
Right. Know? Yeah, and it's still very useful till today. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And then after I would get this back from the actors, that's when I would start to kind of talk with them to figure out exactly what they're going to be wearing and what their plan is for the whole episode. Some of them had multiple outfits, some of them didn't. And then I would kind of work with them, hopefully face to face, and actually see the clothing in person and kind of figure out and pick a couple options. But that wasn't always the case. We had a lot of last minute casting changes with this episode. So Brenda, who is our Tiffany, she got kind of cast with us last minute. So we were doing a lot of emails back and forth. And she was so great because she sent me full photos of costume, hair, and makeup, which I'll show here. So she sent me 4 different examples. As you can see, some very varying examples, which is something else we talked about. Is Tiffany more the athletic type, or is she not the athletic type, or does she really show that right now? What state she's into? So as you can see in the episode, that if you have the clip of it, we actually picked the 3rd photo here.
Number 3.
Yep, is the one that we selected. I had her bring also the first one as well as an option. But my concern with that one was because with Alicia, we ended up putting her in a tan sweater with our last minute change in that previous scene.
Right.
So it would have been an issue with them both being in tan, especially with one of the shot angles that we wanted to do. So we went with the 3rd one there, and I actually really like it. So
and if anybody saw these 4 shots, the differences are maybe subtle. But for us and what works for the character and in that particular scene, the changes are drastic. And you were so right with the number 3 selection. I mean, it just works perfectly.
Yeah, especially in her state that she's in that scene. It might be different depending on what kind of state they're in, but they still give us that kind of general idea. So.
And one of the things that we did with John Hall, we were looking at lighting, and at one point, the 4 of them, including her, are around the dinner table. And you had an option for us. So what we started with at the beginning of that scene, I think it was with Jeannie, with Alicia, that sweater or that top wasn't working in combination as we pulled everybody out.
Right.
But you had 2 backups for us. I believe we had 3 different tops that we could pick that all worked with her character, but now the color combination worked in that scene with that group. It was just brilliant.
Yeah, and actually the funny part is Alicia, I had asked her to bring some other options and she forgot them. So she only had that one option that she was first wearing. And then I had some backup options in the costume shop that I had pulled for her. So luckily I had that for her already as backup, because you never know. That's a struggle that we have, because we have the actors that are bringing their own clothing, that we might ask them to do stuff. And if they don't, we can't really penalize them because they're actually helping us out by saving us money.
Absolutely.
So it's one of those tricky things. But yeah, it was luckily that I had some backup options for her. So it worked out.
It did work out. Thank you very much. Yeah. Where would you like to go next? You want to talk about set?
Yeah, let's talk about set a little bit. This one was kind of tricky, but kind of not, because we'd already been in this space before in the living room, kitchen area. We did remodel the room a little bit.
We did. I asked for a couch.
Well, yes, we got a couch. We also
got new color.
We got new color on the walls, which we had some battles with, but we overcame them. But yeah, so kind of remodeling a little bit, but kind of also the reasoning why is something that we talked about a lot, which was kind of good for us, even though when you see it on screen, you're never going to really understand it or realize that. But the reasoning is Jeannie in her grieving was remodeling, which is what some people do. They have to stay busy. So kind of giving that reason of why behind it was helpful for us.
But that does bring up another aspect of your job that falls to you. Maybe in a larger production, it's a separate group of people, but in our kind of micro, smaller crews, this falls into your job too, and that is continuity. So I've noticed that you and your team are taking very detailed notes, and my assumption is it is not just wardrobe, but it's also colors, it's props, it's what kind of things might you be asked to replicate again in the future. And what you're alluding to is we had a conversation about, can we change the color? Would in story time, would they have had the opportunity to work on their new department so that we could change that look a little bit from the pilot in episode 1 and 2, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And we also kind of had some other challenges because the walls were changing. So to kind of help support that change, we wanted to do a little bit more of a change versus just a slight change in the structure of the walls. So that way it can kind of support that change as well. So it didn't look like an error, it looked like a decision.
Yeah, and then I think we threw a curve at you, and I think that the script had said that Jeannie and Mackenzie were going to have a conversation in the girls' bedroom, and we had shot on that last semester, and I found it pretty tight. It was a little bit hard to work around there. And I knew that we had the stairs, so I just moved that scene to the stairs. And now in retrospect, I imagine it would have been helpful to notify you of this with a little bit more advanced knowledge.
I mean, I got some pretty good advanced knowledge of that one, but
Okay, good.
It wasn't like day of, which can happen sometimes in live theater, especially. But yeah, no, I think I had enough notice of that. It was just more of the questioning of where exactly was going to be seen. Right. Especially when we're in a new location, we haven't seen it yet, knowing kind of what's going to be visible on camera.
Yeah.
Because especially in that area, it was so bizarre that we had to try to figure out what are we hiding and what are we not, kind of thing.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah. But yeah. So I'm trying to think about what I want to go over next. Let me show you some more kind of organization of how I do stuff.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
That works. Yeah. It's more for props and some set stuff as well.
Cool.
So I'm going to go back to screen share.
And by the way, we all kind of got off campus in a hurry, and I realized very quickly I had left my teapot in the prop cabinet.
There is a lot of stuff still on that campus. I'm like, oh, there's that still. So yes, yeah. We could talk about that in a moment too. So this is kind of a breakdown that I utilize when I'm going through a script. Some people, it doesn't make sense to them, but it makes sense to me, and that's honestly what matters in certain cases. So I'd like to break it down by scene and kind of what is needed for each scene. So which actors is definitely important to figure out which costumes, and try to also plan their attire for the scene or episode, whatever it may be. So try and figure that out. And then also props and any type of furniture type thing. So there's a couch and tissue. Technically in the script, it says there's a book too that I didn't put on here, but we ended up using anyway. So this is kind of where I start from, just going from the script and kind of just seeing those general things that we need. There's a teapot there as well, which we can talk about that.
I bought a new one. It's okay.
Oh, good. But something too that I always like to do is, once I kind of have this general, very basic breakdown, is of course once I get the diagrams from you with the director, that'll help me narrow down exactly what's going to be seen in certain shots, so I can kind of cut out certain things if I don't need it, and maybe detail certain areas more. Like the couch, like do we want pillows, and what color is the couch going to be? Once we get those diagrams, and how much of the couch are we going to see?
Right.
And then working with the director as well to figure out more of those details as well. Originally, the teapot I figured was just going to be sitting there and they would already have their tea ready. But Derm, you wanted them to actually pour the hot water and see the steam if we can get it to do that. So I had to change that, and Durham luckily provided the teapot because all the ones that we had on campus were not good to be pouring water out of and drinking for our actors. So there's certain things like that. So there's a whole process to it. Like you start with this base, and then you work with the diagrams, you work with the director to kind of get those more details that maybe aren't in the script. Seeing the water come out of the teapot, that was not in the script.
No.
So once we figure that out, then I can go to the next step of finalizing those other elements and stuff.
So you get the scripts in advance. You're one of the first ones as a department head to get scripts. And I think most people think of scripts as containing just dialogue. You're not only looking at it from a dialogue standpoint, but what characters are in this scene, what's going on in this scene, what kind of activities, where are they going to block these guys around, what kind of things do we need to make sure that they have there. And then one of the things that I think is really awesome, and you ask me this all the time when we shift from one scene to another, is I just want to confirm with you, what time is this? So is it minutes after the previous scene? Is it 2 hours? Is it 2 months? And it's really awesome to have that kind of attention to detail that you bring to this. And that time gap in the story matters greatly to you.
Right. Yeah, it depends on are they still wearing the same clothes? What else has happened in between that? What items do they still have with them? Is it directly from one scene to the next and they're going to have all those same props with them, backpack, notebook, all that? Or have they gone home in between that? And do we see that? Does it matter, kind of a thing as well? As one of the biggest things for us is it seen, and then is it important if we don't see it? So those kinds of things too.
And unlike a stage, which tends to be more linear, you're not having to track this as we shoot it. And oftentimes we're shooting out of sequence, non-sequentially. So, where in the story was this particular scene? Did they have that there then? And would they have it now? But because we shoot it non-sequentially, that makes your job that much tougher, I would imagine.
Yes. Yeah. And even if we're going backwards, it's always hard to kind of figure out like, oh, did they have this prior to or not, and all that kind of stuff. Most of our stuff we don't do like too much of like middle, end, and beginning type stuff. It's always kind of more just two we're having to battle with. If we ever have those three, then that's where it gets a little bit more challenging when it's really out of order. It's harder to keep track of. And actually we did film, I don't know if it made it through, but them running through the house, which is towards the end of something, but we needed to get it then because we had the living room all set up, which that continuity would be a challenge because we weren't going to be filming that until a whole lot later. So trying to keep that continuity, and it's quick shot, but we still want to make sure that the continuity is there. It's always the hardest when I'm watching television or movies and I'm seeing something where they have a prop and then the next even shot is they don't have it. So that's something that bothers me a lot. So I really try to take care of, make sure that doesn't happen in our stuff, which is a challenge. Definitely is.
You do a great job of your attention to details, just phenomenal.
Thank you. I have a good little team there too that helps us kind of work together. I don't know if Zolman's in this class, but she's been helping me out a lot and taking on that continuity as well, which you need to have one person just dedicated to that. Because it is a challenge to try to do multiple things at once, which normally is what I'm doing. I'm doing set, costumes, and then trying to help out with continuity.
Makeup, wardrobe,
all of it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Cool. Where do you want to go next?
I'll show you guys just something else I do to kind of help keep things organized. It's a diagram that I created of our set. So this is the diagram of the living room, and this is the new and improved living room.
This is really cool, and you're not aware of this necessarily, but we have taken versions of this when we looked at producing and directing, starting with the sketches that I start, and then John even has a more sophisticated app that he uses now where he can move, it's really cool, where he can move lights and stuff. And now you have another iteration, and what it's doing is it's providing each person the information that their department and their people need, right?
Right. Especially for us as a challenge is we're not leaving this set up for weeks at a time, we're having to strike it and reset it every time we go in there.
Very true.
So having something kind of finalized prior to kind of helped ease the process when we first got in there.
Brilliant.
Kind of having the diagram is what needs to go where, so we can work quickly when we get into the space, which is our biggest challenge.
Absolutely, absolutely, and recreating it. So I know we finished it up before we left. I think we had the same scene shot over 2 nights, and so everything has to be exactly as it was because we're cutting around that. So once it's creatively decided what it's going to be, now the attention shifts to replicating that each time we go into the setup, right?
Right. Yeah. And with that, we do photos and just kind of keep track of, just the diagrams help as well to know like this needs to go there. We spike things as well. So when we come back, we can set things back in the same spot. But photos and diagrams are definitely very helpful for all of that to work quickly too. But,
yeah, this is really helpful for this conversation too.
Yeah. And then let's see, this is one that we didn't get to this semester because of things. This is the bedroom, the boys' bedroom, which was going to be kind of a new space, but not for us. So this was kind of an interesting thing to kind of, we had to work out where that window was going to be.
Yeah.
Because of a previous shot that we'd seen. So trying to figure that out and the layout of the rest of the room that would work for the rest of the scene. So that was something kind of getting useful to kind of get this, to visualize it, because I'm definitely a visual person. So, but
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And then this is just also kind of part of my prep. I was lucky enough that I can kind of go into the space and kind of lay out things and start to kind of do a pre-design.
Yeah.
So that way when we got ready to go in with cameras and everything, it would be a quicker process. So I was able to kind of go through this, and I took pictures of everything so that way if I needed somebody to help me, I can show them, hey, this stuff, kind of recreate this. Like with Zolma, I would say, hey, can you help me recreate this? And this is kind of what my idea is. And then kind of even the layout of which pictures we're going to go where, which we ended up changing it slightly because of some other changes of placement of camera and everything as well.
And I recall this is how you're communicating with us. I remember getting photos like this that said, okay, you guys want a couch. This is what we have. Here's 3 different options in terms of style and color.
Right.
And to be able to see that and go, oh, yeah, brilliant. This one here is going to work. Let's go with that. So you're using this not only for yourself as a guide, but now to communicate with others on the team.
Right. Exactly. Because we have very little time. So it's always nice to kind of do as much pre as possible. So this is kind of the pre-work of layout and everything like that, and seeing exactly what would be where, and get your guys' approval before we kind of move on to finalize on shooting day. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
This is really helpful.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. One of the points of this conversation is, and it's ended up being kind of beneficial, I think. We haven't done it before, but I think we're going to keep it going forward, even if we just use these as part of the class, is when the crew shows up, they just go to work and they're being designated here and there. And I think the tendency is to think that everything around them is just kind of magically happening. And it's really not. It's all this prep. I mean, you have all this stuff already decided what it is. You have options, you have stuff standing by. You're building things out as the crew setting stuff up, but most of the creative decisions have already been made. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's how we can work quickly when we get into the space. So decisions are made. We do have, again, backup options, hopefully, in case something breaks or we need to change something for camera. But yeah, as long as we have our base and foundation ready, that's the way we got to go, because we have to work so quickly once we get into the space.
We do. We're kind of we're kind of like all small independent filmmakers at this juncture. We have no money. We have very limited time, and we're doing so many things concurrently that one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about in production classes is all the work that can be done in pre-production that you can wait, but you're just going to lose time on set. And I think that we do as a group a pretty darn good job of that. I mean, you know, scripts are out, shot lists are out. We don't have everything nailed down, but we have a good part of it down.
Yeah, and that definitely helps us be ready at a moment's notice to get going. So
it maximizes, I think, the creative time that we have together, to finish up those last little touches. Oh, now that you see the shot and you see this light over there, let me move this down here. But it's not, oh, I need to go out and buy a poster for that.
right, or buy another curtain.
Right, right.
Which is
So,
what I end up doing.
sir, could you tell people briefly about your background? What got you interested in this? Are you just a natural with color, with fabric, with mixing and matching? Did you learn on the job? How did that all come about?
So my experience is actually theater. Those of you that don't know, my degree is in technical theater. So I have a wide range of technical elements and practice from my degree. And I normally just stage manage is where I started out, was stage management, which is definitely where the organizational side kicks in. But I also do a lot of prop work. So all of our shows that we do here at Santa Ana now, I am the prop coordinator, prop designer for.
Nice.
Mainly. So that's where that kind of comes into play. And then I do have experience like somewhat from costuming. I mean, I took courses in college for it, but mainly just this was more on the job, and kind of just learning from some of the other designers that we've had in our department. So trying to figure out, learning kind of on the job, but also kind of just playing with the actors, honestly. They kind of had their own creative styles that they wanted to keep with their characters. And so I just kind of helped support them and honestly just organize it, which is that stage manager side comes in again. But yeah,
So
theater.
we talk about this in the production class, that there's usually two components to what we do. There is this technical organizational, it's like learning chords on a guitar. And then there's the aesthetic side, which is, now how do I bring this song to life? And that follows suit in your discipline as well. It's both not just tracking stuff, but also what's going to work here. Yeah. So it's both sides of the coin.
Yeah, definitely a lot of organization, but just kind of working with the styles. And that's something too, is we're in modern, if it's very different if you're doing more like a period piece or older style play, that's going to be very different. But we're very modern, so working with the actors on that and just the style and everything. So yeah, it's been fun.
Well, you do a fantastic job. I have one kind of discipline specific question. I notice you kind of pull the actors in when they show up. You get them in wardrobe, and then it's natural that makeup comes and starts to work with you at that time too. Can you talk a little bit about what you're looking at with them as part of their makeup? And does it work into the inspiration boards, the colors, and the character in the scene?
Yeah, so with this too, the actors are doing all their own makeup for the most part. So working with what they think their idea is, and then working with actually the makeup team to make sure that what they're doing is going to work on camera. So we've had to kind of communicate to our actresses, no glitter, no shimmer, because those get really problematic on camera. So we try to give them the actors that warning ahead of time. So when they come in, if they already have their makeup done or if they're doing their makeup there, they don't put those layers on. Because that's a very modern style that is really bad for camera. So we try to communicate that early on to them. But just trying to figure out what's going to look good for their character. And some of the actors, they don't feel comfortable wearing makeup. So they much rather go more of the natural look, which is fine for certain characters. And then it also depends on, I always talk with the actors to figure out kind of what they're thinking this scene is about, because with Mackenzie, she has a lot of ups and downs in her scenes.
She does.
So there's going to be days where she's not going to put any makeup on or be very natural looking. There's going to be other days where she's going to look nicer if she's going to be going to see somebody. So talking about that with the actor, and then we're just working with the makeup crew to figure out more of what we want to keep an eye on. I know with Shay, we had some discussions about changing Shay's look a little bit through the scenes and episodes, but still trying to keep it more of that neutral look. So making sure we're not, just kind of know where we're at in the plan for Shay.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you one, for being here today. I think this is really helpful for people to see a little bit behind the scenes and all the things that you do. And then I want to thank you as being part of the team and a department head. Yeah, I've mentioned it before, but it's true. We really couldn't get done what we do without you and your skill and your talent level. So on all those levels, I'd like to thank you sincerely for all you do for the team.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be a part of this team.
Yeah, likewise. All right, Miss Sarah, thanks so much. I hope we can get back to work before too long.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
And with that, just want to wish you and your family health and well-being, okay?
Thank you. All
Thanks, Miss Sarah.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.